last week again, how they all are united and want these Olympic Games to happen and all to be there, of course. And with regard to the opinion polls, I think there are coming one every day in Japan. I can only repeat, what I said from the very beginning. From a human point of view, I personally have all understanding, but the responsibility, of a government and of the IOC is to look beyond this situation. And there again, we have many good reasons to say it's not about the whether the games are taking place, it's about the how. I gave some of the sports events which are going on. We have at the moment a handball world championships with 32 teams from all over the world with a bubble of 3,000 people. In an environment which was not created as a bubble. While we are, preparing for creating such bubbles already for a year now, and have much better conditions, with the village and how to organize this, where you have much better control and all this. So, and then we have all this advice from the experts. We have their vaccination, which all these international federations do not benefit from until now. We have the new rapid testing methods, of which they are starting to make a very good use. So we have all this experience that sport is alive already now under these difficult circumstances. So this is why both the Japanese government and the IOC, based on these facts, based on these experiences, and based on this advice, this is why we are so committed. This is not just something we are taking out of the blue or some wishful thinking. This is based on solid ground.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, President. Let's go to Germany. Holger Kuhner, if you're there from ARD, you want to ask your question.
Yes, hope you can see and hear me. Wait a second. Here we are. Good to see you all. Mr. Bach, two questions. You were mentioning that the playbook is work in progress. Could you just explain what that playbook means? And we are talking about 10,500 athletes. What do you think? How many people have to be vaccinated, referring to delegations and their entourage? Thank you.
Yeah. Now the playbook again. This will be the first version of this playbook, and but I think I haven't seen it yet. I must tell you, but I trust our task force and all the experts who are working on this. What we can expect, they're all together, is an overview over the many measures we can imagine to be applied then in July and August in Tokyo. This is starting with immigration, with the rules for potential quarantines, transportation in Tokyo, living in the Olympic Village, social distancing, you name it. It's really a huge undertaking, and this is, as I said, we have to learn every day these playbooks are under daily review. Whenever there is new information, this will be taken and is taken into consideration. And I'm sure that you will see and will get a really factual overview over all the different measures which we can benefit from, and which then should make people confident and even more confident about the safe organization of the games. With regard to vaccination, we said, again, the National Olympic Committees should turn to the national governments and to have as many as possible being vaccinated. But vaccination, as we always said, also from the very beginning, is not the silver bullet which solves all the problems. It is a part of the measures, and as such, it will be put in this toolbox. Of course, we are encouraging everybody to accept a vaccination out of not only for their own interest to be safe, but also in solidarity with the Japanese people and in solidarity with their fellow Olympians and Olympic participants. But there is no ratio.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Holger. Let's now take a couple of questions from French colleagues. So let's go to Ben Barnier from France Télévisions. Ben, if you want to ask
can you hear me? Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
My question is, are you positive, sir, that the Olympics will happen with people in attendance, not just professionals, not just sportsmen and women or people from the press, but also from the general public?
This I cannot tell you. Because our priority is to ensure safe Olympic Games, and we will do whatever is needed to organize safe Olympic Games. If I think everybody would love to have full capacity stadia and a roaring crowd, that's clear. But if that is not possible, we will respect our principles, and this is the safe organization. This is the first priority.
Merci. On reste en France maintenant avec, on passe à Marc Van Tuyac, l'équipe. Marc.
Maintenant, il va parler en anglais.
Ich kann auch ein wenig in Deutsch sprechen.
Ouais.
Entschuldigung.
Also gut.
Question quand même.
Alles klar.
La première, est-ce qu'il faut attendre des annonces concrètes demain de votre entretien avec les représentants du COJO? Je crois que vous avez un entretien avec le président du COJO et le directeur. Et la deuxième question, est-ce que depuis la dernière commission exécutive, il y a quelque chose de nouveau concernant la réforme de l'article 50?
We will have tomorrow one of our regular meetings on the leadership level with the organizing committee, where we are exchanging the latest information, but there were usually no decisions are being taken. There we are taking stock, on progress on both sides, and having there an open discussion about this. With regard to Rule 50, we have been informed there today in the Executive Board by the chairwoman of the Athletes Commission, Kirsty Coventry, about the progress in their study with the athletes worldwide. You know, they did this in 2 steps. There was a qualitative part and then the quantitative part. And this quantitative part, you know, is being constructed there based on the advice of independent experts who know about how to organize these kind of inquiries and consultations. And there was a great, as we have heard, a great international participation from around I think more than 3,000, if not 3,500 athletes from all across the globe, across all the Olympic sports. And now these answers will be evaluated by and with these independent experts. They will then present the results of this evaluation to the IOC Athletes Commission. And then based on these findings, the Athletes Commission will come with recommendations and proposals to the IOC Executive Board, most likely in April, with regard to this Rule 50 discussion.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Liam Morgan from Inside the Games. Liam, your question, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time, as always. Mr. President, regarding this playbook that you've discussed and there's been some details about in recent days, why weren't some of these details relayed to athletes prior to when they're going to come out next week? I understand it's a developing situation, but can't the IOC have given some of the details of this playbook to athletes to sort of reassure them that the games will go ahead and sort of end this speculation that you spoke about to start with? Thank you.
No, this, you know, as I'm not the expert on this, Liam, but you know what I can tell you about our discussions that we had. You know, this needs a diligent work, and nobody is served if you know, we are putting out something where we are not sure and where we do not have the necessary scientific foundations for this. This is why we have to ask, therefore, for the patients, you know, for the immediate, let's say, life of the athletes. You will see that already last year, following consultation with the IOC, the World Health Organization, you know, has at the time issued these guidelines for the organization of big events, which also applies, of course, to sport events, and from which the athletes and the international federations and all the major sports organizers greatly benefited. So there, you know, I'm really with our experts to say, you know, we are coming up with something when we really have done our scientific work and when we have a very solid foundation.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you, President. Let's now have another go at Graham Dunbar and hope that we can see more than just the top of your head, Graham. Graham, your question, please. Hey, there we are.
Yeah, now we can see you, but not hear you. But I can only tell you that you're doing much better with your hairdo than I do, because I'm coming back, to the 70s of the last century. I have the hairdo soon, like an athlete at the time, but this is only, unfortunately, the only thing what I would have in common with the times by then.
Graham,
Now try again.
we hear you.
We
Now,
all need a haircut, that's for sure. Can you hear me now, please?
now I hear you.
Is that better? Yes, you can hear me now, right?
Yeah.
I was caught a question about the call you had with President Xi this week, and the sort of tantalizing final line in your readout of the call. I mean, two obvious subjects are the Uyghur detention camps and the absence from public view for a while of Jack Ma, someone you've said gives you good advice and is part of the Olympic family. What are your current concerns about those two subjects, and what exactly did you discuss on Monday with the president?
You can understand that for obvious reasons. I cannot reveal the details of conversations with any head of state, whether it's the head of state of China or of any other country. There I can only kindly ask you to refer to the statement which has been made by the foreign ministry in China and by the IOC. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go on now to Italy. Let's go to Marco Bonariggio from Corriere della Sera. Marco.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Bach. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So as you know, until yesterday in Italy, we were really worried about the future of our Olympic movement. So I would like to know if for you was also a relief to know that Italy will go fully to the Olympic Games, so that the independence of the Italian Olympic Committee is guaranteed. And I would like to know also if you were really ready to suspend the Italian Olympic Committee in case of non-compliance of the Italian government.
The answer to the second question is yes. We were ready. There is no doubt. We have there to apply, the same rules and have to treat everybody in the Olympic movement and all the NOCs equally. With regard to the first one, I think you know my appreciation for Italian sport, and my also again my admiration for how the Italian athletes have reacted during this pandemic, how they have encouraged their population, and how bravely they have been fighting there against the virus. This applies to many other athletes around the globe as well, but you asked me about Italy. And therefore, of course, I was not only relieved, I am happy for the Italian athletes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Marco, thank you, President. Let's go to Kyodo News, Geneva office, Masashi Inoue. Masashi, over to you. Question.
Good evening. Yes, thank you for taking my question, Mark. It was nice talking to you, President, the other day.
Yeah.
My question is about vaccination. Yesterday, the IOC made a clear announcement that IOC will encourage athletes from all over the world to get vaccinated before they come to Japan. Does this also apply to Japanese athletes? Do you wish or expect Japanese government or Japanese Olympic Committee to assist that Japanese athletes also will be able to get vaccinated if available?
We have sent this letter to all the 206 national Olympic committees in the world. I guess this answers your question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, President. Pregnant pause. So we have time for just a few more, and apologies, as I say, to everyone else. We have 200 people. We've had about 60 people wanting to ask questions. So let's go now to Martin Ziegler from the Times. Martin, over to you, and then we probably have time for one or two more. So Martin, your question.
Can you hear me, Thomas?
Yes, we hear you and see you.
Oh.
You have a nice hello.
Oh, yeah.
You have a nice hello over your head there.
Oh, my light. Yeah. Hang on a minute. Yeah. Can I just with like maybe 10,500 athletes, 7,000 people coming? Can you understand why there's a strong view that it's irresponsible to push ahead with this, because you're actually, there are views, and many of these people that live in Japan have a view, and it's irresponsible to push ahead with a sporting event.
Based on these effects and based on the available countermeasures which we have been discussing, based on the experience with the different sports events which have been taking place all over the world and which are under the way right now while we are speaking. It is clearly not irresponsible, and we are, able and in a position to offer the relevant counter measures, and this already starts, with the figures you are giving. You're speaking about 10,500 athletes. We took already the measure that these 10,500 athletes will not be there in the Olympic Village at the same time, by reducing the stay of the athletes to 5 days in principle, and having a kind of a wave system. The same then will of course apply to their coaches and officials and others. So this is one of the measures we have been undertaking. And again, take handball now. In Egypt, a country which is considered to be a high-risk country, and you have 3,000 people in a bubble, and these are being organized within a couple of weeks only, or a couple of months, while we have, again, much better conditions. We could prepare much longer, and we have much better conditions because, again, the Olympic Village, because we have there with the National Olympic Committee's partner who can take care of their teams from now on already, and they do, of the athletes and many other issues more. So if we would think it would be irresponsible, and if we would think the games could not be safe, we would not go for it. Again, principle number one, safe organization.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, President.
Thank you. Thank you.
Two more questions then to finish. Bryce Bashlook, I know from Bloomberg you've been waiting a long time. So Bryce, if you want to ask your question, please, and then we'll go to Ed Hula.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
The line is very bad.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder. How is the new, more infectious variant impacting the planning of the games?
All this is being taken into consideration, and this is, why we said we are welcoming the strict measures being taken in many countries right now, to get the numbers down from the very beginning of the spreading of these mutations. And on the other end, we were also encouraged by the news there from the scientific world about the efficiency of the vaccines against also these
making a difference, i.e. what we do at home. What I'm saying is you can't solve the problem alone, but our doing things makes an enormous difference. What Gina succeeds in pulling together is essential to our ability to have credibility in the world. Now, with respect to China, obviously we have serious differences with China on some very, very important issues. And I am as mindful of that as anybody, having served as Secretary of State and in the Senate. The issues of theft of intellectual property and access to market, South China Sea, I mean, run the list. We all know them. Those issues will never be traded for anything that has to do with climate. That's not going to happen. But climate is a critical standalone issue that we have to deal on in the sense that China is 30% of the emissions of the world. We're about 15% of the emissions of the world. You add the EU to that, and you got three entities that are more than 55% or so. So it's urgent that we find a way to compartmentalize, to move forward, and we'll wait and see. But President Biden is very, very clear about the need to address the other issues with China. And I know some people have been concerned. Nothing is going to be siphoned off into one area from another.
And then a question for either of you on coal. Your executive order talks about oil and gas on federal lands, but it doesn't really say much about coal. What is this administration's policy when it comes to coal?
Well, in terms of the oil and gas decision, is to make sure that we take a little pause and review the entire strategy of how we're looking at public lands. So it will include looking at what new leases ought to be approved and sold. It's looking at our ability also to look at coal in that mix. So the program review is going to look at how we manage public lands consistent with climate, but also consistent with the marriage between climate and really growing jobs of the future. So it will be in the mix to be looked at, but it is not at this point included. It was not part of the commitments on the campaign, but we're going to take a close look at all of it. And can I just add on your comment about China, which I'm not going to speak to the international dynamic, but I am going to say that part of the challenge that we face here is a challenge that President Biden has already started to address with his Buy America pledge. We have to start not just shifting to clean energy, but it has to be manufactured in the United States of America, not in other countries. And there is going to be a large discussion about how we make sure that a lot of the investment is about building up our manufacturing base again. That's great jobs. That's often, hopefully, union jobs, but it is also a wonderful opportunity for us to recoup the benefits of that manufacturing and lower the cost of clean energy. Part of the way we're going to get there is by making sure the federal government buys American and that the federal government looks at its procurement across every agency so that the breadth of what we spend is designed to advance job growth in the United States, to advance health benefits for environmental justice communities, and to begin to tackle the the existential challenge of climate change.
Jeff Mason?
Thank you. Jeff Mason with Reuters. Question for both of you. Can you give us a sense of when you expect to have the so-called NDC or U.S. target for cutting greenhouse gas emissions as part of the Paris Accord? And can you also give us a sense of how ambitious you plan to make that number? Will it be 40%, 50%, higher than that?
Well, yeah, I'm the dude who's supposed to deliver this in a timely way, and he sets the timing. So that basically, we want to make sure that the NDC is something that can be announced before the summit on Earth Day. And so we're going to be out of the gate working with the agencies to see what kind of reductions and mitigation opportunities there are. And also, again, to look at our public lands to make sure that we can continue to store carbon in our soil, to work with agriculture and others, to look at how we better manage our forests so we're not seeing the devastating forest fires that we've been having before. So all across the federal government, every agency, and you'll see many of them specifically tasked in this executive order, will participate in the task force that we're going to have to actually develop the most aggressive NDC that we can to deliver the kind of boost that Secretary Kerry is looking for, to be able to ensure that our international efforts are robust and sufficient to address the challenge internationally.
Follow up on that, perhaps for Secretary Kerry. How do you assure international partners that the U.S. will stick to whatever you propose after having seen the Trump administration take the U.S. out of the Paris Accord?
Well, that's precisely why we're going to stick by it, and I think our word is strong. I've been on the phone for the last few days talking to our allies in Europe, elsewhere around the world, and they are welcoming us back. They know that this administration already had a significant part of what has brought us to, will bring us to Glasgow, which was the Paris Agreement. The Obama-Biden administration had great credibility on this issue, and having President Biden be the person now who is driving this forward is enormously meaningful to the folks there. And they also know that I was deeply involved in the negotiations in Paris, and am now asked by President Biden, to make certain that we do the same at Glasgow, if not more. So I have had no one question our credibility at this point in time. Someone probably will. And the answer will be that I think we can achieve things in the course of the next 4 years that will move the marketplace, the private sector, global finance, innovation and research, that in fact, no political person in the future would be able to undo what the planet is going to be organizing over these next months and years. This is the start of something new. I don't know if you read Larry Fink's letter of BlackRock yesterday, but there's a new awareness among major asset managers, commercial banks, and others about the need to be putting resources into this endeavor, because it is major in investment demand. So I think the proof will be in what we do. Neither Gina nor I are going to start throwing around a lot of big promises, but you heard what she just said, and we will work very closely, because we're going to try to bring to the table to help inform her and the folks she's working with what we're picking up abroad and what people are doing abroad and the steps that they're taking and how we now have to measure ourselves against them, and they will measure themselves against us. We are well aware of that.
Can I just add something? I just want to call attention to the fact that cities and states have really picked up the initiative to move forward on clean energy, because the solutions are cheap. The solutions compete effectively against fossil fuels. We are talking about solutions that we're not asking anybody to sacrifice, but are to their advantage. And if you look at the record over the past 4 years, while the prior administration might have wanted clean energy to head in a different direction, it's gone faster and farther than anyone ever expected. And the idea that we could, with this new work that we're doing together, send signals to the marketplace who are purchasing at the federal level and are relooking at different ways of having on-the-ground change, we can build that demand. We can actually grow significantly millions of clean energy jobs. And all of a sudden, the question won't be whether the private sector is going to buy into it. The private sector is going to drive it. And so this is going to be a signal setter, the way the federal government ought to set on what our values are, what we think the future needs to be. And this is a value-laden effort that President Biden has undertaken with full knowledge that it's going to benefit jobs, it's going to benefit our health, and it's going to lead to that future we want to hand to our children.
We'll just do these two in the front, and then they will come back, I promise. So go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, if you would, there very certainly are oil and gas industry workers who are watching you both right now, who will hear the message that the takeaway to them is that they are seeing an end to their livelihoods. What do you say to them, particularly those people who President Trump struck a chord with on the campaign trail when he promised to save their jobs? What is your message to them right now? And also to the oil industry executives who are listening, are you putting them on notice today?
Well, we didn't come here to put anybody on notice except to the seriousness of President Biden's intent to do what needs to be done to deal with this crisis. And it is a crisis. With respect to those workers, no two people are more in this room are more concerned about it. And the President of the United States has expressed in every comment he has made about climate the need to grow the new jobs that pay better, that are cleaner. That, I mean, you know, you look at the consequences of black lung for a miner, for instance, and measure that against the fastest growing job in the United States before COVID was solar power technician. The same people can do those jobs, but the choice of doing the solar power one now is a better choice. Similarly, you have the second fastest growing job pre-COVID was wind turbine technician. This is happening. 75%, 70% of all the electricity that's come online in the United States in the last few years came from renewables. Not, you know, coal plants have been closing over the last 20 years. So what President Biden wants to do is make sure those folks have better choices, that they have alternatives, that they can be the people who go to work to make the solar panels. They were making them here at home. That is going to be a particular focus of the Build Back Better agenda. And I think that unfortunately workers have been fed a false narrative. No surprise, right? For the last few years, they've been fed the notion that somehow dealing with climate is coming at their expense. No, it's not. What's happening to them is happening because of other market forces already taking place. And what the financiers, the big banks, the asset managers, private investors, venture capital are all discovering is there's a lot of money to be made in the creation of these new jobs in these sectors. So whether it's green hydrogen that is going to come, whether it is geothermal heat, or whatever it's going to be, those are jobs. The same worker who works in South Carolina today putting together a BMW, which happens to be made there, and is currently an internal combustion engine, can put together a car, but it's electric. So this is not a choice between having jobs, having good jobs, having the quality of life. Quality of life will be better when Gina has put her team together that produces choices for us that are healthier, less cancer, cleaner air. The greatest cost to America, the greatest cause of children being hospitalized every summer in the United States, we spend $55 billion a year on it, is environmentally induced asthma. That will change as we begin to rein in what we used to call pollution in this country, because it is pollution. And I think that workers are going to see that with the efforts of the Biden administration, they're going to have a much better set of choices. And frankly, it will create more jobs than stuck where we were.
Could I just add by pointing out a couple of things in the executive order that I want you to just call to your attention? We talked about the Civilian Conservation Corps. That is an opportunity to put younger people into work in vitally important efforts. But if you look at this, it also has set up a task force that is looking at these coal communities that are really reliant on their local energy and utility. And it talks about how do we revitalize those economies. And it talks about how we can put people to work using the skills they currently have where they are, to start looking at those old abandoned oil and gas wells that are spewing out methane, or all of the coal that is mines that haven't been properly closed, that are doing the same, that has great impact on climate, but also will keep an opportunity for those individual workers to have work in their own communities. We're not going to ask people to go from the middle of Ohio or Pennsylvania and ship out to the coast to have solar jobs. You know, solar jobs will be everywhere, but we need to put people to work in their own communities. That's where their home is. That's where their vision is. So we're creatively looking at those opportunities for investment so that we can get people understanding that we are not trying to take away jobs. Remember, when we say climate change, eventually people are going to think jobs, just like President Biden when he hears the words climate change. And so we'll do everything we can to recognize that revitalization is necessary in these communities, to find creative ways to put them to work. And then we're going to do as Secretary Kerry says, and start investing in new technologies and new manufacturing. And that includes the large manufacturing like cement and steel. That's work that we should be doing here. That's work that inevitably is going to be necessary to rebuild our infrastructure, which is also one of the biggest opportunities we have for job growth moving forward.
Two quick ones. Sure. Administrator, one to you and one to the Secretary, if I may. What you may hear from some corners of criticism is why are we doing this now when we're already in an economic crisis? You look at the state of New Mexico, where 1/3 of the state's budget is funded by oil and gas. So why not let the country get back on its feet before we do this?
Well, the issue in New Mexico is that somebody reported a bit incorrectly, or maybe not as precisely enough, that this wasn't about impacting existing permits and fracking. This was about new leases on federal lands. So I think that the opportunity for the states to continue to accrue the royalties from both coal and oil and natural gas that is properly done on federal lands is going to continue. And there's even an opportunity in the review of that program to look at the royalty issues, look at the job growth opportunities, look at a variety of things to make sure that public lands are being properly managed. Now, in terms of the job issue, we're explicitly doing this because our economy is right now stagnant. We have millions of people out of work, out of jobs, millions of people that are afraid they can't feed their families. If you're faced with that, what do? You boost the economy and you grow jobs. But why at the same time aren't we thinking about the weaknesses of our current economy in terms of the number of environmental justice communities that have been left behind, the number of people that are breathing dirty air and their kids are getting asthma? So instead, let's think about all of it at the same time. I know it's a crazy idea in a bureaucracy. You're only supposed to do one thing. What we're going to do and think about all of it, because people need to have jobs. This is all about building the jobs of the future we want, not continuing to niddle at an economy that is no longer going to be where our future lies.
Mr. Secretary, to you right now, over the course of this first week, there are a lot of big priorities here. There's COVID, the economy, immigration, racial justice, now climate change. As a veteran of Congress, of the Senate, what is the priority and how quickly do you need legislation to make this permanent?
Well, Peter, the priority is precisely what the president has set out, all of them, all 6 of the major crises that he faces. And he's addressing every single one of them. And he knows that the United States, all of us, have the ability to be able to do that. And the reason that has to be done is every single one of them are life and death. Every single one of them represent a challenge to the very fiber of our society. And the other reason, obviously, everything, I agree with everything Gina said, but I'd simply add that the other reason for doing it now is the science tells us we have to. And that's one of the things the president is restoring today in the executive order is respect for science and the science office. So, I mean,
$2 trillion price tag, $2 trillion for COVID, $2 trillion for this. It's a lot of money to a lot of Americans.
It is real money. And yes, it's a lot of money, but you know what? It costs a lot more if you don't do the things we need to do. It costs a lot more. There are countless economic analyses now that show that it is now cheaper to deal with the crisis of climate than it is to ignore it. We spent $265 billion 2 years ago on three storms: Irma, Harvey, and Maria. Maria destroyed Puerto Rico. Harvey dropped more water on Houston in 5 days than goes over Niagara Falls in a year. And Irma had the first recorded winds at 185 miles an hour for 24 sustained hours. That last year, with one storm, $55 billion. So we're spending the money, folks. We're just not doing it smart. We're not doing it in the way that would actually sustain us for the long term. So this is critical. The goal of the Paris Agreement was to hold the Earth's temperature increase to 2 degrees centigrade. Even if you did everything that was in Paris, we're going up to 3.7 or 4. That's catastrophic. What President Biden is trying to do is listen to science, listen to facts, and make tough decisions about what we need to do to take the world to a better place, and particularly our own country. And that is what he is committed to doing. So, yes, there are a lot of challenges right now, which sadly, all of them were exacerbated by the last 4 years. Now we have to try to make up for that. And that is a hard pull, but this president is capable of doing it. And he's putting together a great team that I think can help him do that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina McCarthy. Thank you, Secretary Kerry, for joining us. You're free to go.
Thank you.
To go see the president. So you can all see they're both experienced and passionate and tenacious, having worked with both of them in the past. So the crisis is in good hands. I know we have a short period of time here, but I just wanted to provide an update on a question that you all have been asking a bit about, which is what some of the outreach our teams are doing as it relates to the COVID package that is a top priority for President Biden. As we have talked about almost every day in here, probably every day, our team continues to build support for the American Rescue Plan as more and more voices across the country recognize the urgent need to get American families the help they need. We've obviously seen a broad coalition of support emerge from the Chamber of Commerce to Senator Sanders and organized labor to hundreds of mayors and local public health officials. The president and vice president are engaged directly with members and have had a number of productive conversations that will continue through the course of the week and will only pick up in the days ahead. Senior White House officials are also engaging with not just congressional leaders, but also state and local officials, key constituency groups, and others to gather feedback on the proposal and move the package forward. So let me give you a couple of examples from just yesterday. Chief of Staff Ron Klain engaged with members directly throughout the day, as did Senior Advisor Anita Dunn, which they will both continue to do moving forward. Counselor to the President, Steve Ricchetti, and Office of Legislative Affairs Director, Louisa Terrell, are quarterbacking the team's broader legislative outreach and have had dozens of conversations with individual members to understand their priorities and receive their feedback. In addition to ongoing conversations with leadership on both sides of the aisle, already this week, members of the National Economic Council and Domestic Policy Council and staff from Treasury have met with the relevant committees, including Senate Banking Committee, Senate Finance Committee, House Ways and Means, House Financial Services, House Education and Labor, and the bicameral Small Business Committee. NEC Director Brian Deese is doing one-on-one briefings with members of Congress and meetings with caucuses, including yesterday's meeting, which I believe has been reported, with the Problem Solvers Caucus to discuss the proposal. Hill engagement will continue with Jeff Zients and Brian Deese meeting with the New Dem Coalition, along with several other briefings that are scheduled. Also, our outreach isn't limited to Congress, which is vitally important. This isn't just about speaking to elected officials. This is also about speaking to the country and building support and educating and engaging with leaders across the country. So yesterday, Jeff Zients and his team spoke with bipartisan governors. As you all know, they talked about the COVID package by the National Governors Association, organized by them, and administration officials briefed tribal leaders and a number of mayors yesterday as well. And the Office of Public Engagement, led by Cedric Richmond, briefed civil rights groups yesterday, including the NAACP, the National Action Network, Justice Action Network, Urban League, Coalition of Black Civic Participation, and Black Women's Roundtable. Today, they have meetings with labor leaders, advocates for young people, as well as organizations dedicated to building wealth in the Black community. On Friday, OP will also, the Office of Public Engagement, I should say, I hate acronyms, will convene 100 presidents of historically Black colleges and universities also to discuss this proposal. And the only other thing I wanted to mention before we get to your questions is that, as you all know, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was just confirmed The president will be meeting with his economic team on Friday, including Secretary Yellen, for a briefing on the impact of delay in moving forward with the additional economic relief. With that, let's get your questions. Alex, your first day in the White House briefing room. And Alex's first day, 2 Alex's first days.
It's good to be here.
There's an initiation afterwards that the press corps will conduct. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. I'll make it quick because I know you have a pretty hard out in a few minutes, but
I think you all have a hard out too, but yes.
I wanted to ask about one of your favorite topics, impeachment. Nearly every Republican senator last night voted to throw out the impeachment trail against President Trump. Does President Biden have a reaction to that? Does he trust Congress to hold President Trump accountable for the insurrection against the Capitol? And does he see censure against former President Trump as a viable alternative to conviction, since it looks unlikely at this point?
Well, the president certainly respects the role that Congress has. Senators, of course, the Senate, as they're overseeing the trial moving forward, in determining the pace and the path forward for holding the former president accountable. That continues to be his belief in all of his conversations that he's been having with members about the recovery plan. They have said they expect from him that his focus will be on COVID relief. That's how he will use the bully pulpit. That's how he will speak to the American people. And they are eager to work with him on that. So that's where his focus remains. And what steps they take to hold the former president accountable, he'll leave it to them.
Why the resistance on weighing in on the issue?
We've weighed in many times. The president has been asked about the issue. We put out a statement when the House put out a voted on impeachment, I should say. But his focus is on delivering on what the American people elected him to do, which is to get relief to the American people, to get the pandemic under control, to ensure working families can put food on the table. And that's where he feels his efforts should remain.
Okay, go ahead. Thanks. So does the White House have a comment on this social media profile that has emerged of Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene? And is there a response to whether any disciplinary action should be taken against her, given everything that's come out?
We don't. And I'm not going to speak further about her, I think, in this briefing room.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, one more, if you don't mind, just kind of a little bit of housekeeping.
Sure.
The last administration had suggested that on the origins of the COVID-19 virus, that it may have originated in a lab in China. It was never definitive. Do you have an update on that, on the origin, where we are on that investigation?
Well, first, obviously the misinformation, of course, that we've seen also come out of some sources in China is of great concern to us. It's imperative that we get to the bottom of the early days of the pandemic in China, and we've been supportive of an international investigation that we feel should be robust and clear. Our view is that we must prepare to draw on information collected and analyzed by our intelligence community, which is something that is ongoing, and also to continue work with our allies to evaluate the report's credibility on the investigation once it's done. In addition, as you all know, Secretary of State Tony Blinken was just sworn in yesterday, and one of his priorities is, of course, ensuring that our staffing on the ground in Beijing, which is something that fell back in the last administration, is returned to what it was prior, which means we want to have science experts, policy experts on the ground in the roles that they should be serving in, to ensure that we're also there representing our interests from the United States on the ground in China. Go ahead, Peter.
A couple quick ones that I still don't think I fully understand. I know the executive order that was signed, but has this White House invoked the DPA, and how soon till we'll actually see companies compelled to produce supplies or vaccine or whatever else that impacts Americans?
It was invoked the day it was signed, within 24 hours of it being signed.
You said that jump started the process, so I guess that meant it was invoked.
Yes, and I confirmed that when it was the next day, the following day in the briefing room, which I realize everybody can't be here every day because of COVID. But it was invoked, and it means that our work is ongoing with companies to ensure that we are expediting the manufacturing of materials to ensure that we can get 100 million shots in the arms of Americans. And I know there's been some confusion about this and what exactly it is. What does the DPA mean? There are a few examples that our team has cited, including on vaccine supply, low dead space syringes, which means it allows for the ability to get an extra dose into the Pfizer vial, which is important to getting more doses out there. help additional N95, the production of additional N95 masks, isolation gowns, gloves, pipette tips, and high absorbency foam swabs. So we're really talking about very specific materials that can be used by vaccinators to get these shots in the arms of Americans.
Thanks for clarifying. There was some confusion on the earlier call, which is why I repeat it here. Let me ask one other question. Yesterday, you deflected this to the USOC, but my question's a little bit different today. We're now hearing from the organizers of this year's Summer Games in Japan, and the head of Japan's Olympics Committee is seeking public reassurances from President Biden himself, given that the U.S., of course, is the largest contingent of athletes, that the games should be able to go on. As the world is dealing with the pandemic right now, based on where we are now with the vaccine, does President Biden believe the games in Japan can safely go on?
Well, the president, and I'm not sure if this readout had gone out yet, but he had spoken with the Prime Minister of Japan earlier this morning, and a readout was going out as we were coming out to the briefing. I'm not sure if they spoke about the Olympics. I'm happy to check with our national security team on that to follow up with, but I don't have any more assessment of the Olympics at this point in time.
Whether he has, so it hasn't been discussed whether he has a position on whether it would safely be able to go on yet.
I don't have anything more other than I haven't had much on it, but I don't have anything more than I've had on other days on it.
So we ask, so we'll follow up with
understood, and they just had a call this morning, but I haven't had a chance to talk to him specifically about it. Go ahead.
Jen.
Thanks, Jen. 2 vaccine questions. First of all, this came up on the COVID call earlier, but how seriously is the White House considering using the Defense Production Act to compel other pharmaceutical companies to produce the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines to be supplied?
Well, I didn't hear the entirety of the call because we were doing some preparation for the event this afternoon. But from listening to our team talk about it, there are obviously manufacturing facilities that have the capacity and the ability to get these vaccine doses out. And we don't want to get behind the pace of and start from scratch, I should say, in ensuring that they're ready to do that. I don't think our concern at this point is whether or not we're going to have the vaccine doses. Obviously, the president announced yesterday the intention to purchase additional doses. Our confidence in the manufacturers to have those doses available. The concerns we have are one, contingency planning and all of the different things that can happen, because this is a Herculean task that has never been done before, but also ensuring we have vaccinators, we have vaccine sites, et cetera, available. So I have not heard from our team plans to seek other manufacturers at this point in time. And I'm happy to follow up with them and see if there's anything additional.
And then on the 200 million doses, the president said he's ordering them. What is the status of that order? Have Pfizer and Moderna agreed to produce 100 million doses each? And how quickly do they say they can do it?
Well, we expect to get the doses by mid to late summer, the majority of doses by mid to late summer, some earlier than that. So we're confident that we'll be able to get those from the manufacturers, yes. Go ahead, Karen.
Jen, a couple questions on schools. Does the administration plan to develop metrics or standards for what a safe reopening of schools will look like?
We do, and our CDC director, and I'm not sure again if she was asked about this important question, I know as a fellow mother, but we will have specifics that we'll defer to the CDC on the safe reopening of schools. As you know, the president has talked about his commitment and his goal of reopening most K-8 schools within 100 days. There are obviously a number of steps that will need to be taken in order for that to be possible, but he has directed the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Human Services to provide guidance on safe reopening and operating for schools, childcare providers, and institutions of higher education. But as our COVID team has outlined, that's going to require testing materials, support for contact tracing, vaccinations for teachers, and ensuring they're equitably provided. But our CDC director and team will be looking into putting together some specific guidelines so there can be clarity on that front, which I know a lot of districts are looking for.
Those things you mentioned all cost a lot of money, and a big part of the COVID relief package is a lot of money to go to school reopening. If Congress doesn't approve the money you want and schools don't have what they need to pay for things to open safely, would the president support teachers staying at home and support virtual learning continuing through this entire school year?
Well, I think the president recognizes, as we all do, the value of having children in schools and doing that in a safe way, which is one of the reasons he set this ambitious goal of reopening most K through 8 schools within 100 days. But one of the reasons that the funding for safe reopening, for getting schools the equipment, the testing, the ventilation in some cases that they need, is because nobody wants to be having a conversation in May or June about why schools are not reopened. So this goes back to the argument that our team has been making and all of these calls and engagements and meetings that I outlined about the importance and vital nature of each component of the package. So we won't get into a hypothetical. We are confident that Congress will move forward with a package. Let me just go. Oh, we got to wrap up soon. Okay, I'm sorry. We'll do more questions tomorrow, but we had two such great guests. Jen, go ahead.
Thanks. I just have two quick questions. One is just on the climate actions today. They leave out Treasury's Financial Stability Oversight Council, which experts say could play an influential role in addressing climate risks. Does the administration have plans to take action on climate finance, and should FSOC direct agencies and regulators to address climate change?
Well, I'm going to use a reference that my friend and colleague, Ambassador Susan Rice, used yesterday, which is there are 1,453 days left in this administration, and addressing climate and the crisis of climate is an issue that the president has conveyed to members of his cabinet, members of his senior team, as an absolute priority. So Secretary Yellen has been in her role for one day, but certainly I'd send you to them for any more specifics. But this is the beginning, not the end of our work on climate. Nadia, go ahead.
Is the White House concerned about the stock market activity we're seeing around GameStop, and now with some other stocks as well, including the subsidiary or whatever, the company that was Blockbuster? And have there been any conversations with the SEC about how to proceed?
Well, I'm also happy to repeat that we have the first female Treasury Secretary and a team that's surrounding her, and often questions about market we'll send to them. But our team is, of course, our economic team, including Secretary Yellen and others, are monitoring the situation. It's a good reminder, though, that the stock market isn't the only measure of the health of our economy. It doesn't reflect how working and middle-class families are doing. As you all know from covering this, we're in the midst of a K-shaped recovery. America's workers are struggling to make ends meet, which is why the president has introduced this urgent package to get immediate relief to families. All right, I'm going to go Nadia, and then we'll be totally done because everybody has to go. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Good to see you on a different podium. I have two questions, one about COVID and one about China. Okay. Regarding COVID, the president promised to increase the supply to states by 10 million doses. Yet statistics shows that 47% of Americans are hesitant to take the vaccine, despite that the president and the vice president took it publicly. What is the administration doing to convince Americans to take it, to reach the herd immunity by, say, 70% by the fall?
You're absolutely right, Nadia, that this is one of the biggest challenges we face. And for anyone who tuned into the briefing that our health team led this morning, it was one of the first issues that CDC Director Dr. Walensky raised. And one of the things we're doing is prioritizing providing correct information about it. And the vaccines, so I'll take the opportunity. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are safe and effective. That's one of the things she said today. They were tested in large clinical trials to make sure they meet safety standards. About 30% of US participants in those trials were Hispanic, African American, Asian, or Native American. About half were older adults. And so we want to provide clear data, as I just did, but also we want to meet people where they are, communicate directly with communities of color, people who have concerns, and use medical and health professionals to do exactly that. Okay, you had a China question, and then you really have to go, but go ahead.
And second, many welcome to your rejoining of the WHO, yet some wants to push for a transparent investigation into the relationship between China and WHO. And also, yesterday in her hearing in the Senate, Governor Raimondi declined to blacklist Huawei technology in the U.S. Is this some kind of caving into China, or is it a nuanced way to deal with China?
So I think the second reference, I think, was to Huawei. Yes. So let me just convey clearly our position on this. Let us be clear, telecommunications equipment made by untrusted vendors, including Huawei, is a threat to the security of the U.S. and our allies. We'll ensure that the American telecommunications network do not use equipment from untrusted vendors, and will work with allies to secure their telecommunications networks and make investments to expand the production of telecommunications equipment by trusted U.S. and allied companies. Again, we'll take many more questions tomorrow. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
It